Hi everyone, and in today's video we will learn how to update senhasegura in a clustered environment if you use version 3.21 or later. Some of you may notice that we have a very similar video to this one on the same YouTube channel, a video that also explains how to update senhasegura in a clustered environment. But the version 3.21 of senhasegura introduced a new requirement to the update process, and it is important that you know it. In version 3.21 or later, in case you are using the latest version found in our mirror server now, it is extremely important that you open the TCP ports 9300 and 9200 in all nodes. Version 3.21 uses a new technology that requires access to these ports. I'll repeat that. To update senhasegura, now you need to change all nodes in a cluster. If you have, for example, a 2-node, 3-node, 4-node cluster or more, you need these ports to be open between all of them. Again, ports 9300 and 9200. This is an additional requirement introduced in this version, but remember we have two other requirements, the snapshot and connectivity to senhasegura's mirror server. The snapshot is our rollback plan, so it's really important to do it on every computer. We will do it again in this video to show you. And it is also important that you have port 59022 open between the nodes of your senhasegura cluster. But this is probably something you have done to create the cluster, but it serves as a reminder. And finally, you must be able to connect to senhasegura's mirror server. There is a very interesting article describing these requirements which listed the 3 mirror servers that you need to connect before any updates. That means your firewall has to allow connectivity to these 3 addresses. Let's prepare the update then. First, we have to make sure the cluster exists. Mine is a 2-node cluster. You can see the cluster size by going to Orbit Replication Status. Mine says 2. And one very important thing before we move on to the snapshot is to turn off the senhasegura automated processes. Why? Well, senhasegura uses automation to perform a myriad of tasks, such as password changes and audit tasks. Before we take a snapshot, we should turn these automations off to make sure that no important changes are made to the database between the snapshot and the update. Imagine we need to roll back our update using the snapshot, but senhasegura has already changed one of the passwords. My snapshot won't know that one of the passwords has changed, and we won't have access to the new password. Because let's say I turn off senhasegura, take a snapshot, boot it back on, and the platform automatically runs a password change. If I roll back the snapshot I took, it will not include this new password, and this can cause problems. So let's make sure all automation is suspended before we take our snapshot. You will have to log into the master instance, and how do I know which is my master instance? Run the command orbit application status. Now I know my master instance is SSLab. In my case, the IP address is 192.168.0.120, so I'll use this to log onto the web interface. After you log in, go to Settings, Execution Processes. We will turn off automation for expired passwords. Your ID may be different from mine, so look for the name, okay? Expired operation cancellation, operation executor, and operation executor retry. That's it. Now that you have turned off the automated processes and completed all the other requirements, let's take the snapshot. Here on the left, I have my primary or master node, as shown before, and on the right, my secondary or slave node. You must always take snapshots in the reverse cluster order. Start by shutting down the secondary node, taking a snapshot, rebooting the secondary node, and waiting for it to rejoin to re-enter the cluster. Then, you follow the same step in the primary node. Clusters with 3 or more nodes should follow the same process from last to first. For example, if you have 4 nodes, you start by shutting down the quaternary node, taking the snapshot, rebooting it, and waiting for the cluster size to go back to 4. After the cluster size is back to 4 nodes, shut down the tertiary node, take the snapshot, and reboot. Again, wait for cluster size to go back to 4, shut down the secondary node before moving on to the primary node. Since I only have 2 nodes, I will shut down the secondary node, run the command orbit shutdown, confirm the command. This command safely stops several crucial services. That is why we advise against commands such as power off. Shutdown is the most appropriate command here. You can see that while the command is running, I can still navigate this node because it's still shutting down all the services before shutting down the node itself. Wait for the node to be completely down, as seen in the cluster size, before taking the snapshot. You can see I've lost connection to my secondary node, but I'll make sure by checking the cluster size. Remember, I used to have 2 nodes, so it should now say 1. Orbit replication status cluster size 1. Okay, so now I can move on to the snapshot. Good, snapshot taken, and I rebooted the secondary node. The uptime, as you can see, says 1 minute only. But remember to validate the status of the database through the command systemctl status MySQL. The database is active, and if I refresh this page, the cluster size should be back at 2. Now we can repeat the same steps in the primary node. Shut it down, take a snapshot, and reboot it. You won't be able to see the cluster size after shutting down the primary node because the computer will be down, but you can log into the secondary node if you want to check the cluster size to see when the computer is back on. Now that all the snapshots have been taken, let's start the system update. Just a reminder, on the right I have my secondary node, on the left my primary node, and we are updating a cluster environment, and these updates must follow the normal cluster hierarchy, first primary, then secondary. Wait for the complete update of the previous node before moving on to the next. You should never try to update 2 nodes at the same time. Update one after the other, no matter how many nodes you have. To update senhasegura packages, run the following command on the primary node, apt-get update. This is where you connect to the mirror servers we mentioned earlier. Next, run apt-install orbit cli to start the installation process. And finally, run the command orbit update. An important tip. It might happen that in the middle of an update, the power in your house goes down or you lose connectivity to the terminal while trying to run the orbit update command. In this case, you wouldn't know whether the command was successful before the terminal went down, for example. That is why we recommend you run this command on a socket. Then, even if your terminal goes down or something else happens, when you get back, you can resume to that same socket. I'll do that by running the command screen, hit enter and press the space bar. And now I can run the orbit update command. The system will remind me of the importance of the snapshot. I can confirm that I have taken one. And now, how do you leave the socket? Well, you can actually stay here if you want, but if you want to leave, press Ctrl-A-D. Now I'm out of the socket. I can run screen -ls to see a list of active sockets. Every screen has an ID number, and this one is 23345. To go back to the screen, run the command screen -r and the ID number. I can see how the update is going again. Okay, now we wait. Okay, the update has been successfully completed in the master node. If you want to double check, run the command orbit version, and this brings you the version of the system that you are running. And now that the master node has been updated, I can move on to the secondary node. Let's repeat the same steps. apt-get update. Wait for it to download the latest packages. apt install orbit client. Open a screen. Orbit update and confirm. One detail. On the left, I'm still working inside a socket. So if I want to run the screen -ls command there, my status is attached. And how can I leave a screen? Because Ctrl-AD leaves it, but the socket remains active. You should never leave an unused screen active. So to actually close the socket, run the simple command exit, just like when leaving a terminal. This will take you back to the original terminal. Now, if you run the screen -ls command, that socket will have been removed. See? No sockets found. Back to the secondary node, let's wait for the update. Great, the secondary has been successfully updated as well. I'll double check by running the command orbit version. Same thing in the primary node, and you see they are both running the same version now. Now that the update is complete, you should reboot senhasegura. The reboot also happens in the reverse order like the snapshot. Let's start rebooting the secondary node. Wait until it gets back to the cluster. We know that by keeping track of the cluster size. And only after this node is back on, I reboot the primary node. To reboot, run the command orbit shutdown, but add the parameter R. R stands for reboot. Don't use the reboot command, use orbit shutdown. That's it, and thank you for watching.